The z-score formula is your value, which is x, minus the mean divided by the standard deviation. So let's apply this to Lynette to find out how Lynette's height compares to the mean. Lynette's height is 65 inches, so that is going to be our x. Find her standardized height. Standardized height is her z, so find z. If the mean height of the class is 67, that's your mean, with a standard deviation of 4.29. So we know x, we know the mean, and we know the standard deviation, and we're going to find z. Yes?
How do you know that x specifically goes with 65 inches standing distance?
It's a good question. So above I wrote x is your value, so if I was comparing my height, it would be mine. But since it's Lynette's height, that's her value. Her value is 65. Other questions? Okay. So I'm going to use this formula, z equals, and we said the x is 65, minus the mean, 67, over the standard deviation, 4.29. 65 minus 67 is going to get us what kind of number? Positive or negative? Let's try. 65 minus 67. Oh, what kind of 2? Negative 2. Okay. It's giving us a negative number, and sometimes people get a negative number and they think they're doing it wrong, but no, z-scores are positive and negative. What would a negative z-score tell you? Would you be above the mean or below the mean? Below the mean, yeah. So we already know she's below the mean because she's 65 and the mean is 67. Now we're going to divide this and we're going to get a decimal to 2 decimal places. So we're going to do negative 2 divided by 4.29. Oops, I did the wrong number. 4.29. And we're going to round it to 2 decimal places. I have negative 0.46, but the next number is 6, which means it rounds to negative 0.47. Negative 0.47. Negative 0.47. So that is Lynette's z-score. We're going to start reading the next question, and then I'm going to have you guys work on finding the z-scores. This story is about Sophia and Jim, and they took different tests. They took the SAT and the ACT. And it's really hard to know who did better because they have different scales. So we did talk about these tests last time. Last time we talked about the composite score. This one is about just the math score. All right, so Sophia scores 660. So if that's her score, that would go for which variable? If Sophia scores 660, is that the x, the mean, or the standard deviation? X, good. So that's going to be Sophia's x. The distribution of scores in the population is symmetric. That's because of the normal curve. And it has a mean of 500 and a standard deviation of 100. So before we even talk about Jim, let's use Sophia's numbers to find her z-score, okay? We'll do Jim later, probably after lunch, but let's find Sophia. Z equals, I want you to set up the fraction and then divide it and get a 2-digit decimal. Later, we'll do Jim. I saw a lot of answers on there. We did 660 for Sophia's score minus the mean, which is minus 500, right? Over the standard deviation, 160 over 100, and we get 1.6 for Sophia. Now, what we're going to do after lunch is we're going to find Jim's z-score, and we're going to compare it to Sophia's to see who did better on their test. All right. Olvin, what did Jim score on the test? 26, good. Okay, minus the mean score. Sophie P, do you have the mean score? 18. And then over the standard deviation. Sophie L, do you have the standard deviation? 6, good. All right, so we're gonna do 26 minus 8 over 6. And I'm getting 8 over 6. So it was 26 minus 18 over 6, which is 8 over 6. And then you can use a calculator because you want this number to 2 decimal places. And I'm going to tell you why in just a minute. In fact, this last number for Sophia, we can actually write it as 1.60 because having 2 decimal places will be helpful with z-scores. All right, let's do the 8 divided by 6. I'm getting 1.33. Okay, so once you have 8 over 6, divide it and round to 2 decimal places. The reason we round to 2 decimal places is because we can get more information from z-scores using a z-score table, and the z-score table is rounded to 2 decimal places. Okay, so I'm leaving that there for 30 seconds. If you just got here, please hurry and catch up. And we're going to talk about percentile. All right, so if you go into Schoology and you find our class, which is 6th period, and then you go into Unit 8, Day 4, warm up and notes, and we're going to go to the last page to find the z-score table. Here it is. All right, so you should click on that link and open it up. There are lots of z-score tables out there. Like this one's, there's nothing special about this one. It probably even has advertisements on it. But if you just Google z-score table, you should be able to find one. All right, these are negative z-scores on this side. And then if you go to the next page, there's positive z-scores. It takes a minute to load, so you're like, there's nothing here, but it's coming. Those are still the negative z-scores. I don't know what that is. All right, here's positive z-scores are coming. It's still loading. Oh, those are still the negatives. All right, I'm gonna go back to my worksheet though. So we're gonna use the z-score table to solve this next problem. Hopefully it will have finished loading by then. All right, so this is about a golfer. And she's practicing her swing many times. And when she hits her driver, the distance the ball travels follows a normal distribution, which means most of the time she hits it about the same length, but sometimes it's a little bit shorter or a little bit longer. So the distance the ball travels follows a normal distribution with a mean of 304 and a standard deviation of 8. What percent of her drives travel less than 322 yards? So I can see the mean and I can see the standard deviation. What will be the x in this situation? What other number are we given besides the mean and the standard deviation? Guys, read it. It's right there. Thank you. Yes. The only other number in the problem is 322. So we're trying to compare it to 322. So this is going to be our x. So take a moment now, find her z-score. While you're doing that, I'm going to check back and see if, while you guys are finding her z-score, I'm going to check back and see if this is loaded. Still thinking about it. Yeah, that z-score table is not loading for me today. Okay, I think I'm going to use this one. I'm going to change the link because that one's full of ads and it's like not even loading. Ryan. Thank you, Ryan. Emmanuel, please come before the bell. Okay. So guys, you might need to close the link that you opened for z-score table and try again. I just changed the link to a different one that's going to load better. So z equals, what should we put for x? What number? 322. Oh, it's frozen. Thank you. Z equals 322 minus, what's the mean? I heard a couple answers. Very good. 304. Over the standard deviation? Good. All right, so I'm getting 18 over 8. Did you guys get 18 over 8? And let me go into Desmos, because I want 2 decimal places. So the z-score is 2.25. All right, we have to find positive 2.25. Is it going to be on this side of the page? No, because this has what kind of numbers? Negative. See the numbers on the left here? They're all negative. All right, here's where we're going to look on the positive side. Start by finding 2.2. It's over here. Okay, find that 2.2 on the left. Then the number after it, 2.2, is 2.25. That number you find on the top, up here. And so you're going to line up 2.2 with 0.05, and then that is going to give you your percent. It's a decimal number, so we have to make it into a percent. So on the z-score table, we got the 0.98778. Is that the right number? Yeah. All right. To make it a percent, multiply it by 100. And multiplying it by 100 does move your decimal over 2 places. So we get 98.778% of her drives are less than 322 yards. Okay, so we found the z-score, and then we used the z-score to get some very specific information. What percent of her drives are less than 322 yards? So almost all of them, right? She's not making very many drives that are 322 or more. All right, I want you to now try the next problem in the same way. You're going to find your mean, your standard deviation, and your x. Find your z-score, and then take that z-score and find it on the z-score table. So do the next problem. It's really the same problem. The third one's a little bit different. So first thing we're going to do is find your z-score. Z equals x. What number was x? Thank you. 290. And then minus my mean, which is right here. And over my standard deviation. And this time I'm getting negative 14 over 8. Anybody else get negative 14 over 8? Yeah, thank you. And then I want you to go to a calculator and divide that and round it to 2 decimal places. All right, so it already has 2 decimal places. It's negative 1.75. Yeah, I'm going to pause for just 30 seconds so you can make sure you have this on your paper. And then after that, we're going to look at the z-score table together. I think it's really confusing to look at the z-score table at first. So I want to make sure everybody gets practice with it. Score table, which I think is this one. Yeah. All right, so when you open the link, the first side is the negative side, and this time we want the negative side. And we're going to negative 1.75. And so we're going to go to the row that has negative 1.7. And then the 0.05 is here. And so the number I'm getting is 0.04006. Raise your hand if you would like me to show you that number in more detail. 0.04006. Did you get that one, Liliana? Oh, we talked about it. You got that, right? Yeah. All right, so here's your first row, and then the 0.05 here, and then 0.04006. So we're going to take that number onto our paper now. 0.04006. Now we have to change your decimal to a percent by multiplying by 100. Percent means per 100. And that multiplication will move your decimal 2 places to 4.006%. All right, so to answer the question in full, only 4.006% of her drives travel less than 290 yards. So not very many. Not very many of her drives are less than 490 yards. And I'm actually going to round that to 4% because it's going to help me answer my next question. So 4% of her drives are less than 290 yards. So that's a weird word, drives, right? Like when I think of drive, I think of driving a car, but that's what it's called when the golfer hits the ball far. It's called a drive. I'm not really familiar with golf terminology myself, but I learned that one. So it doesn't mean she's driving a car. It means she's hitting the golf ball. All right, does anybody have a question on that one? All right, the last one is actually, it looks really similar because it still says a mean of 304, a standard deviation of 8, and it says 290 yards. So what word is different in the last one? All right, Sophie found it, at least. You guys see that? What percent are at least 290? So that means 290 or more. The z-score table doesn't tell you how many more. It tells you how many less. And we already know that 4% are less than 290. So consider this. You know that everything altogether is 100%. If 4% are less than 190, what percent are greater than 190? What would we do? Take a moment. I'm going to give you a thinking minute here, okay? We already know 4% are less than 290. What percent are 290 or more? You don't need the z-score table. This is a common sense question. Okay? Talk to your neighbors about what you think the answer is. All right. So we knew 4% was less than 290, so we're just going to subtract that from 100%. And now we know that 96% are at least, that's 290 or more, 290 yards. Okay.